All right, welcome back to the Pennsylvania and Berwind final operating session. This is Waza leaving the map, and behind that to the left is the little town of Acker, Pennsylvania. The town center, which we're passing over, that part is just pasted in from another part of the PNB, but the surrounding area of the map is all newly added, what I've been calling flyover country, meaning the trains are usually passing through on autopilot, and the purpose is mainly just to space out the main towns so that the travel times are longer. Just zooming out here, for each of those 10-mile segments that I added, which are mainly one baseboard wide, I added a few industries and some more baseboards, some detailed areas. This part is the grain silo by Dave E. Snow, prolific asset creator, and he also made the derelict buildings in this area, which is kind of a nice area to pass by and also to potentially visit in a future playthrough. Okay, we are here with Amy. Now, ordinarily, here's where I would say, we have a lot to do on this episode. But actually, now we have two engineers that we're going to be focusing on for the rest of this episode, and just two loads that we need to pick up. Amy here, and then Andrew over in Laurel Siding right now, heading to Agway. Amy is going to be heading to the Grafton Steel Works, and we're going to pick up some pipes on the little loading track there. And then Andrew will be picking up more wheat, and then both of these trains will be heading to the other side of the map in Juniata. Sort of weird that the spreadsheet said that all the goods this time around are being delivered to the Juniata side. That is a result of the randomizer, I guess. Kind of interesting, though. The empty Grafton yard. Grafton is at one side of the map. So based on the fact that it's on the one side of the map, it seems like I often don't really have any use for the yard per se, and the same seems to be true for Juniata. Locomotive servicing area here as well I have not used yet. Passing a little lunar on that signal there, that's kind of cool. I don't know if it works. Yeah, we have not visited the Grafton Steelworks yet, but we've been in this area. We had to drop off some lumber in the very first episode, and that was, I believe it was Jane who came on with the lumber, and then Jane has sort of just been hanging out here ever since the lumber and wheat drop-offs got completed. Grafton is a surprisingly large little town over there. Not a very heavy train. I believe it's under 1,000 tons, so I don't think we're going to take very long to stop before we back in. And then I will take care of moving Jane out of the way. Gonna sit over here by this switch. Union Pacific Bulkhead Flats. We just need to get Jane out of the way. Now, I was sort of thinking like, well, we could put it on autopilot here, but then it'll go slower, but that's not the concern. The concern is like, well, we don't have actually that many tasks to perform this session, so, you know, let's follow this guy all the way through. Oops. Yeah, I'm a little concerned. I would have liked to go check on Andrew, the other train that should be operating and moving on the route. Sometimes when you haven't opened a route for a long time and you open a session, at least for me, all the trains that were on autopilot will suddenly just be continuing their motion, but their commands will have been canceled or something. And then you can get situations where the train just runs off the end of the track because you thought it was on autopilot, but it didn't think it was on autopilot, or its autopilot got canceled. Grafton is one of the last places that appears in the P&B build series. It's on the far side of the route from Juniata. And this should be a very long loading area. I'm hoping we can get at least half these cars. Okay. Well, Andrew certainly wasn't just sitting around, wasn't in any danger of running off the end of the track, because it turns out Andrew was stopped at a red block signal. Which suddenly turned yellow. Interesting that both tasks that we have to perform were kind of blocked by a switch engine just hanging out. Kango's here. I see. Really great to see you, and having all the folks joining for this last session on the PNB and last playthrough, operational playthrough that I'll be doing for both of my sessions. And Andrew is just taking this line of covered hoppers up to Agway, someplace we haven't visited so far on the playthrough, for the last pickup that we will be making. So assuming that the Grafton Steelworks is going okay, then we'll pick up 12 cars at Agway and 9 cars at Grafton. And since we have a green block all the way, it looks like, through Old Town up ahead, and I'll definitely check the switches up there. Maybe it's time for just a little commentary, because we're not going to be jumping around so much. I do think that some of my episodes is a little difficult for me to talk because we're jumping around from one task to another and really doing all these not complicated, but requiring thought switching moves or industry working activities. So this time we're mostly going to be following locomotives around these 2 locomotives that we've already seen. So that should give us a lot more time to sort of talk about, what the status of this route is, what the status of Trainz is, what the status of this channel is. So first of all, I thought I would mention something about the PNB. I downloaded the PNB partly because this is the route that got me interested in Trainz several years ago. Sort of during the pandemic is when I first found out about Trainz and started watching that series, which I think came out around 6 or 7 years ago. And of course, the series starts when Trainz was at a significantly earlier phase of graphics than it is now. And then it evolves rapidly, and you can see those changes during the course of the playthrough. Anyway, I really enjoyed that series. That's how I got involved in Trainz, and now that I have the route, basically I see some pros and cons about the route. Of course, it's not an HD route, but that's okay. I think it actually performs quite well as a non-HD route, even though, as you know from the Wallace branch, I sort of prefer HD, but many people don't have that capability, and I understand that. So yeah, I think it's a very good route despite that. The pros, I think the scenery is great, the detail is great, and then I also like how the DBEV, which is a separate route, purchased separately and everything, I like how well that integrates in. It can integrate in a lot of different places. You can attach it at either end or in the middle, as I've done. And they're a really great match in a lot of industries, just the right number of industries, and I think that it has a great mix of different things going on this route. Okay, now I'm going to check the switches, make sure we're going the right way. Okay, as it turns out, we are not going the right way. I thought we were going to be going through Old Town, so that's why I was not disturbed that we were taking that turn and didn't flip the switch in advance, but that's okay. Mistakes were made. And as I said, we don't have a very heavy train, so I don't know why we're taking so long. Let's just check that. Okay, 1400. Not too bad. Okay, so I guess a little back to what I was saying. The size of the route, the way the industries are spread around the map, it's perfect for my personal playing style, which I've been kind of demonstrating and trying to kind of, advocate for in this series. But also the fact that the industries that, when I downloaded the route, they were all set up in advance with the multi-industry 2 tracks. So that really helped me configure the route the way that I want it configured. And then the other thing that I really like about the route is how I think that everything is staged perfectly. The scenery, the cities, the way that it's not too many baseboards. A lot of places, even where it's only 1 baseboard or 2 baseboards deep, they feel a lot bigger. And I just think all of that is done really well. In terms of the negatives, I do think that there are a lot of spline grasses on the route that don't look good, especially when you zoom out or when you're looking at it from above. And I have replaced some of those, but replacing all of those spline grasses was a little bit too much for me. Maybe I'll do more in the future to replace them. I did a few bulk replaces on the ones that I thought were most noticeable, but I think that a lot of those spline grasses are a little bit outdated and they have the very noticeable shadow. They don't look good. Also, on my playthrough, a lot of there's a lot of gray texture in the grassy areas. Like underneath the spline grasses, it'll be gray pavement, and I don't know if that's like some sort of mistake or bug or missing texture that I don't have. Anyway, it looks weird. That's something that I corrected in a lot of places. Also, when I downloaded the route, I had a lot of problems, I guess, with the PBR textures, ground textures that were clipping through tracks or clipping through roads, and a very noticeable sort of PBR-related problems. And that didn't take me very long, like maybe a couple sessions, a couple hour playing of the route, and I had basically corrected all of those that I found anyway. I'm probably missing a few, but yeah, it's something to be aware of when you download the route. Also, I'd say that a lot of the yards are quite large and they don't have many crossover tracks, especially in Juniata, but also in Allegheny, and also in Grafton even. So I did end up adding a few, but I could have probably added some more. And then the last point is that the sounds that are added across the map, they're super immersive and they do add a lot to the route. I'm not saying they're bad, but a lot of those sounds, there's too many of them, and like the dog barkings, especially like in Laurel, it can be really annoying if you're working in one of those areas for a long period of time. So I ended up deleting some of those little sound assets. So those are the pros and cons, and I think if you look at that list, only in terms of the cons, only the spline grasses are something that I would consider like a material issue with the route. And I think that's just reflecting its sort of age. This is an industry here that I have not yet set up. Okay, this is Vonnie, I believe. Yes, Vonnie Junction. Okay, I don't know why those cars are like that. And this should be Agway. Yeah, I definitely feel that something happened when I saved the route last time, that some things got messed up, because, you know, I definitely just dropped these cars off and departed normally. There was nothing unusual there. Okay, Kanko says, oh, I remember that well, the pre-PBR and pre-Speed Tree days. I was there. Elsinore says, no Sims died in the making of this mistake. All is good. Yeah, I should have just put this on autopilot because I really cannot multitask. All right, now a few of the things that I did since getting the route, of course, I merged with the DBEV. That's the first thing, and really we talked about that enough, so I'm not going to show that on screen. I also changed some of the industries over on the DBEV. I added the fertilizer industry that we serviced, and I also added the major refinery that we've been to a few times. And then I removed the refinery that was in Old Town that was featured in the start of the Approach Medium build series. So those are the major changes. That's the most significant change. The second most important change that I made to the route was I lengthened a lot of the industry tracks, not just the loading area, but also extended the tracks a little bit more, because I like to have longer trains, and a lot of the industry tracks really are quite short, or their loading area is towards their end of the spur track instead of in the middle, so you can only handle a couple cars or even just one car at a time. So that's just too fussy for the way I do my operating sessions. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I did add 15 miles of extra length, because otherwise I felt like the edges of the route are too close and you arrive too quickly from Juniata to Allegheny and then from Allegheny to Grafton. That, for me, makes the operation seem a lot more realistic. I'm not sure if I'm right on that, but that's what I like to do. Not that I'm calling all of my operations realistic, not by a stretch, not by a long stretch. And I did add some industries in the flyover territory that I mentioned. So, yeah, before I continue this, let's jump on over to see if anything happened with Amy. I have had a lot of issues, and I checked this MI2 right before the start of the session. It is set up correctly, so I'm going to load these cars. It will be faster if I just load the whole train and then unload the cars that can't be loaded. All right, so we will have to do a little bit of switching here, move a few of these cars off the end so that we can get at, so we can fully load this train, but that shouldn't be too much of a difficulty. Going to shove the cars back this direction. Sort of baffled. I thought I did the switch, but apparently not. pipe assets, I can't remember if they're on the DLS or not. They should be. I think they're ready. But the bulkheads I don't think are not on the DLS. It has occurred to me to create a new car asset, which would be this car as an attachment point, and then a separate attachment point for a driver, because the empty car is just so freaky for me. All right, I'm going to do a navigate to. Oh, pretty perfect timing, honestly. Now, the loading area for this industry, I'm going to say is, and this may be something where I need to edit it a bit later, but so there's some actual loading chutes here. But yeah, I'm going to say it's this entire area. So needless to say, we're not going to wait for this to load. I think I have all of the industry tracks set to load in around 10 minutes, except for those few that I have set to load more quickly than that. But we will, why don't we accelerate time? All right, now Amy is loaded with pipes. And Amy is ready to go. Just need to couple up with the tail end of the train, and then we'll be heading back to Juniata. All right, now I want to mention some thoughts about the operating sessions that I've been doing, the playthroughs, both here and on the Wallace branch, since this is the last of those episodes that I'm recording. And I've really enjoyed the run-throughs. I've enjoyed recording them. I've certainly enjoyed playing them. This is a style that I really like to play. It's not something that the game is really enabling through its vanilla play, so it's something that I manage via a spreadsheet. I wish I could do the whole series over with better sound. I'll just check the sound to make sure I'm being recorded. Yes. Yeah, I feel that the sound on some of the early episodes is really not good, and not just the PNB, but both series. But I think it's normal when you do a series your first time streaming and such that you always want to redo something, but it's okay, basically. Because the series was quite long, I tended to assume that viewers would want the action to go faster and to see more progress throughout each episode. And so as I played over time, I tended to put in more cuts and jumps between drivers to make sure that we were servicing more than one industry. We weren't just stuck in one yard or with one driver and so forth. And I feel that a lot of the cuts make the episodes a bit choppy, as you would expect. And so, I don't know, I don't feel that they're as watchable as my intention. I did try to show all my moves. That was my ambition, was to show all my moves. But I don't know if showing all my moves might have been a little bit too much or a little bit too annoying. A lot of the cuts that I made are essentially just cuts where I felt the cuts were necessary to kind of like eliminate scenery loading or times when the MI2 was not performing effectively, that sort of thing. Getting lost again? Okay. Here's my train. Here we are. Okay, I'm going to put this on autopilot shortly and head off to Juniata. So yeah, I don't know if that jumpy style was appropriate for most people. If you are curious about my session playthrough style, there is a spreadsheet video that I posted on Twitch, and I may put it on YouTube as well. I'm not sure. Let me know if that seems useful. As I've said many times, my method is originally adapted from Microchip's method, but it's clearly different as well. And I'm not sure why the two are different. I wish my playstyle could evolve more towards like yard classification work and longer trains. Most of my action is focused on sending trains directly to their destinations, like the industries, and then working those industries, switching them out. Most of all, I really wish, and case in point right now, I really wish I could master the art of staying zoomed in and getting a nice view of the action instead of always staying at the 500 to 1,000 foot level, because that's the easiest level for switching and monitoring your train. But of course, that's not really realistic. And it's probably more importantly, not really very good for the viewing aesthetics. I'm not sure when or if I'll do another playthrough series. I do have a lot of fun with these series. The PNB, I think, has been actually more fun than the Wallace branch in some respects. I'll certainly be playing the game again, but it'll take a while I work on other projects before I come back to any operations, and then I probably will think about how I'm doing it and maybe change some things up. Try something new, maybe shorter videos, maybe more realistic mode focused on the cab view, maybe dropping the complex spreadsheet operations or not showing it as much. You know, like not trying to show everything, but just showing the parts that I think are visually most interesting, or maybe the switching moves that I think are most interesting, so that it's not sort of overwhelming in terms of the overall length of each episode, or maybe you feel like things get done, but more things get done off camera, so you see progress more quickly, something like that. Anyway, something a little bit more visually interesting and something focused more on cab view definitely is my intent, if I ever do another operating series, that is. I'm not sure what the engineers do in the situation where you're approaching an intersection like that and you start out from a dead stop. All right, there we are for our last loading event of the P&B playthrough. And I am not really sure if we're going to be able to do a run around here, but I'm going to make a valiant effort, even if we don't manage to complete it in this episode. But this will essentially be the last thing that we'll see on the playthrough is doing this run around if we're able to do that. And yes, there is a Y track here, but I do not think this Y track is long enough. Almost, but not quite. And honestly, I'm not sure that this track is long enough either. Like I said, we'll make a valiant effort. So yeah, just to conclude, I'd like to just say a few things about where I am at in Trainz. I still love the game Trainz 22. I think this is the computer game that I have played more than any other computer game in my entire life. Not just the amount of time that I spent playing the game, but the asset creation. I've never gotten so addicted to a computer game because it really replicates my childhood hobby of model railroading and is in many ways even better than that model railroading hobby in my opinion. But like any Trainz user, I have a lot of frustrations with the game. I wish the lighting was better above all, especially at night or when you're near nighttime, like right now actually. And also the shadows inside the cab view are really not good. Oddly enough, they're actually relatively acceptable right now. But you can see there's something weird going along the ceiling there. And then there's some parts that you can see a little bit on that wall where there's some pixelation. It's very unusual. So yeah, the lighting in the game I think needs a lot of work, and I think that's pretty much a consensus, including among the people who are responsible for the game at N3V. I think that's the #1 issue. The moving PBR terrain is also an issue I find very distracting. For the Wallace branch, there's a lot of parts that don't look that good because of the moving terrain specifically. Then the third pet peeve I have, which is more of a quibble, I guess, it's that the day always starts and ends at 6 p.m. everywhere in the world in every season, which I think is really problematic for a bunch of reasons, not just for aesthetics, but for like operational realism. Just doesn't make sense to me that would have been set up that way from the beginning even. So that constrains my gameplay to between like 8 and 4 or 4:30, and actually I think the lighting in like 10 to 2 is ideal. And overall you just want more environmental controls, better skyboxes, better lighting, all of that. And I know that those are on the development roadmap, but I haven't heard anything from N3V about those for quite a long time because they're focused on TLR, Trainz Living Railroad right now, and they're focused on Plant Factory, and they've spent a lot of time working on those things, so I don't even know if they're working on the lighting, the skyboxes, and that sort of thing. It's frustrating. I would definitely have prioritized the lighting and the appearance, because basically I'm worried that there's competition is moving forward, and if the game still looks like it's in, I don't know, 2010 or something, then fewer and fewer people are going to be coming into the game. Yeah, it's problematic on a whole lot of different levels. Just on TLR, I don't use that, so it's easy for me to be negative about TLR, but I do recognize that a lot of folks do consider that quite useful, or they would like it to be developed further so that it's useful for their needs. So I understand that that's actually quite supported by the community. So I like to run my own trains and I don't use it, but that's okay, that's my style, that's fine, it's just different. And but within TLR, there is one thing that I think could be very useful for me, which is the dispatch manager. So the dispatch manager is something that I think has great potential because you can see so many things at a glance. However, and it even has the chance to, I think, replace this driver control center, which I think looks very 2006, with these animated heads that don't look very good. And basically, you can't see anything at a glance here. But oddly enough, the driver control center, from the point of view of dispatching trains, it actually has more information than this dispatch manager has. The dispatch manager only has these consists, and it does show the first name of the locomotive engineer, but it's not sortable by that. And then it doesn't show their speed. It doesn't show whether they're moving. It only shows what command they have right now. And for all of these, it actually just says cannot dispatch, which I don't even know what the purpose of that is. So yeah, I feel that this should have sortable columns by name of engineer or name of driver, number of consist, speed, tonnage of the train. And again, I'm only talking about information that the game has within it already. I'm not asking for some information that the game does not have present in the game already. And then, this status could be the same, like basically manual control, that could be left the same. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that Trainz needs is probably improved lighting. The look of the game really has to keep up with the times. And I have been playing a lot of Derail Valley, a lot meaning a few hours. And you just see the contrast so clearly between the quality of the shadows and the interiors. And also the controls of the locomotive are very realistic feeling. And of course, we understand all the assets are created by users, generally speaking. But the poor lighting really affects that ability to do realistic cab operations, in my opinion. So that said, I'm not trying to knock Trainz. I think Trainz has inherently way more capabilities than what Derail Valley has, because obviously one game is focused on a sort of a gaming experience, whereas this game is focused on route creation, asset creation, the community. There's so much more things that you can do in Trainz than you can do in Derail Valley. And then, of course, because of that, there are so many more challenges for the developers, because they have to make the game more of a platform for users as opposed to just designing it to work well for its intended gameplay style. And yeah, Derail Valley has some locomotives created by users and stuff, and there's some mods like multiplayer, which are great and everything, but it's not the same thing as what Trainz is as a platform, obviously. And ideally, what would be really wonderful is if the two platforms could somehow converge. If some of the capabilities of Derail Valley, not just in terms of graphics quality and shadows and lighting, weather, if those things could be nicer. But if some of the aspects of like the realism of the physics of the locomotives and the trains, if that could be improved in the direction of Derail Valley, that would be really useful. And then for me, I think, if I criticize Trainz just now, I should also criticize myself or give a status update on myself. I'm still learning a lot. I'm still mastering asset creation. I'm working on texturing these models. I'm pretty good at Blender now, but my Trainz assets are still hardly optimized. Scripting, I'm not any good at. I'd like my assets to not only look good, but also look good from inside and out and look good in Trainz. And I'm still sort of at the B or B plus level. So that's why I haven't released that much onto the DLS yet. And I think that's really common for Trainz creators. I do plan to release the Wallace branch, and so that's why I'm going to be taking a break from operating sessions to focus on that and also on releasing the assets that I've worked on. I've gotten them all good enough that I can play with them and have fun, but not good enough for me to release them yet. It's always nice to let the cars go by. Runaround was surprisingly successful. All right, now that we have programmed this last train on autopilot to, I guess, head towards Allegheny and then off the map, that completes all of the tasks that we set out to perform on the PNB in 3 days. Actually, not quite within time. It's 4:38 now, game time. So we didn't quite make the target, but almost. And so just to close out, I'd just like to say to thank Approach Medium and Bill M for creating the PNB and getting me into Trainz in the first place. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the PNB long session playthrough the way I organized it. I hope you found something interesting, maybe a tiny bit useful for your own Trainz experience. I'm posting these videos mostly for myself so that I can watch them and enjoy them after the fact. But also I'm sort of trying to promote this little Trainz community, and I hope that that's going to remain vibrant. After this episode of the PNB, the Wallace Branch series will continue through the final episode of that series. That ending series is, the ending episode is number 28, but those have all been pre-recorded. So this is actually my last episode with Trainz for a while. If you like Trainz, if you want to see more content like this, you can support me by watching it and liking it and sending me a message if you think that this type of content is something you'd like to see in the future. So thanks for joining. Maybe see you again next time.